Okay, welcome back to the Absolute Beginner's Guide into Europa Universalis 4. This is Rex, and in this video, we're going to discuss the more kinetic aspects of the game, which include battles, showing you what a battle looks like and actually how it works. Once we understand sort of the underlying mechanics of battles and warfare, it'll make understanding recruitment and tactics a little bit more easy to understand. To be quite honest, this game has a lot of information overload that I bet you've probably noticed already. A lot of information overload, a lot of button overload, and there are people with 1,000, I don't know, 5,000 hours in this game who discover new things every single time they play. You can have a very fun game by simply just clicking on some troops, making sure your technology level is about the same as another country, recruiting them, and then sending them off into engagements to conquer other territories. So you don't really need to understand, especially when you first start, some of the minutia of battles and tactics and warfare in this game. But I think if you're watching this video, you probably have an interest into kind of understanding a little bit more depth that's going to help you later on. So first thing we're going to do is let's take a look at this battle. And I see my forces have invaded Southern Ireland, and I can look at what the battle looks like by either clicking on these two swords or clicking on the units themselves. And this brings up the battle interface screen. On the battle layout screen, we actually see a lot of information. At the top of the screen, we see where and what province the battle is being fought. Underneath the title of the province is actually the provincial modifiers. Now, these are pretty important, and you can see these actually on the provincial level that I'll show you when we talk about forts later, but I can see that because my army is attacking through woods, I'm getting a -1 dice roll. Now, what are dice rolls? So the game simulates battles by 10-sided dice, and it's actually it's actually a lot more complicated than that. So the dice rolls are also modified by army size, strength, casualty modifiers, etc., but they're also modified by your leader's skills and the terrain that you're fighting on as well. So right now we have a general here, John Talbot, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce this name, but they have an opposing general as well. Our general is actually has a decent amount of stats in the fire phase of combat. So we are actually getting a little bit of a bonus in our fire phase, and the phases are down here. The provincial modifiers that we discussed up here are actually found in the picture next to it. So essentially, they're canceling each other out. Below, like the dice roll simulation thing, is actually your morale, and morale is actually the most important thing to remember when you consider armies and setting them to battle. Morale you can think of as your hit points, and obviously, if your hit points or morale gets to 0, your forces are going to retreat. So having a high morale, and I can just hover over it right here, having a high morale is actually really important for keeping your forces in the fight longer and preventing them from from retreating. How do we get more morale? So we get more morale through military technology. And like everything else in this game, technology makes all the stuff better. So right now our maximum morale is 2.6 at the next technology level, and I'll show you this once we're out of the screen. We'll improve our morale by 0.5, so we'll be at 3.1. And morale gradually builds up over time as well. It's also modified by prestige and power projection. All that really means is like the more successful your country is, the more battles you win, the more wars you win, the more provinces you take, the better morale modifiers you're going to have, and the higher your morale is going to be compared to other countries. Now, below this is actually the battle readout. And you see that our forces are lined up in the red line boxes, and the enemy forces are lined up in the green line boxes. What these gray boxes represent is your combat width. And what combat width is, the amount of troops that you can bring into battle at one time and fight on the front lines is dependent on the size of your combat width. So just trust me when I say this, and I'll show you where to find this number later. But Our combat width right now is 20, and if I counted up all of these boxes, it would be at 20. And let's say I was fighting, I had a combat width of 20, and I had 22,000 soldiers, and the enemy had a combat width of 20, and they had 30,000 soldiers. At any given time, only 20 of our troops can meet on the front line. And then once a troop is destroyed or once a unit is destroyed, the extra leftover units in reserve will come in and replace those units. And these lines are actually organized automatically, so you can't total war style it and put, cavalry exactly where you want it or infantry exactly where you want it. But the game does a really good job at organizing your troops on the line level. So every single one of these red boxes represents our soldiers. Every single one of these green boxes represent the Irish soldiers. And when I started, I'm taking some casualties right now because the battle is underway, but I had 14,000 soldiers. And if we count, we would have 14 red boxes here. Every box that's an X is an infantry unit, and every box that has a line through it is a cavalry unit. Same for the enemy. Now, why is that important? The reason it's important is because infantry, when I hover over, let's say, this Irish unit here, infantry has a flanking range of 1, which means that it can attack directly in front of it or to either side. Cavalry, on the other hand, has a flanking range of 2, which means that it can attack directly in front of it or 2 units to either side. Now, why that's important is I'll highlight this right now. So, although he has 4 soldiers, I can bring all of my troops to fight at once, but only the troops that can hit him can actually participate in the battle. So this infantry unit, this infantry unit, this infantry unit, this infantry unit, and this cavalry unit. But this infantry unit can't reach the soldier. This cavalry unit can reach 2 soldiers if it wants to, but it can only pick 1. And this cavalry unit right here can also reach the outside flank of the Irish army. The reason that's important is because, remember, this Irish unit can either attack the infantry unit directly in front of it, the infantry unit to the left, or the cavalry unit to the right, which means that it can't hit the other cavalry unit that we're bringing into this fight. So this cavalry unit can essentially attack this unit unopposed. Now, to finish this off, let's go through the phases and what some of these numbers on the side of the chart show. So every 3 days, the way battles are fought is that every 3 days, there's a different phase of battle. The first 3 days of battle, you have a fire phase. So that's muskets, rifles, artillery. The second 3 days is your shock phase. In the shock phase, that is your hand-to-hand combat, your swords, axes, spears. And every 3 days, the combat phase will change until one army has a 0 morale and they have to retreat. The items on the right-hand side of this battle layout, you see that we have our infantry, cavalry, and artillery numbers. That's pretty self-explanatory. Let me point your attention to this thing right here, which is essentially your country's discipline. So what discipline represents is the organization and fighting ability of your soldiers. And every country, as you can see with the Irish below, starts with and has 100% discipline. The only way to kind of get more discipline is through idea groups, army innovations, decisions in the game. But just know that having more discipline means that your armies are going to be able to take less damage and actually give more damage. Below the discipline number is your morale. And the best way to improve your morale, like I said before, is through your military technologies. But see here how it's modified by that power projection and army tradition thing. And we're getting a little bit of negative modifier because our prestige is a little bit low right now. But long story short, the better your country's doing, the more morale your troops are going to have, which makes logical sense, right? Below this is your military tactics. So your military tactics the only way to get better military tactics is actually through improvement in military technology levels. So essentially, everything I'm telling you in this game comes back to improving your technologies using Monarch points. And the reason why military tactics are important is they actually reduce the amount of damage that your soldiers get. So discipline improves damage and reduces damage that you receive, and military tactics basically reduces damage. Now, what we're going to do is let me just reduce the speed real quick off camera. I'm going to unpause, and you're going to see how these phases are going to change. So watch how this changes from fire to shock, and watch how their morale slowly goes lower and lower. So we unpause, fire, and we just won. So since we just won this battle, we can see a few things on the battle screen layout. So we can see how many casualties we took. Obviously, we took 0 casualties, but we lost 857 soldiers. And man, it looks like we actually wiped out all of their soldiers. Wow, okay. We also gained a 1.63 prestige and a little bit of what's called army tradition. Don't focus on this too much right now, and we gained some war exhaustion. I mean, we lost some soldiers, so obviously our country isn't going to stand us losing soldiers continuously over and over again in a prolonged fight. So that's essentially what war exhaustion is. So we'll click OK. And then now let's focus on army composition and recruitment. Okay, so now that we've seen a battle, we kind of understand some of the things that we're looking at and what may be important, right? So our army right here is currently sieging down this province, so we'll just let them be for now. There's a couple different ways that you can recruit armies, and I can select an army again by just clicking directly on it, and this is our Royal Army. We can see that we have 10,000 infantry soldiers and 4,000 cavalry soldiers here. Every unit of infantry and cavalry is made up of about 1,000 soldiers, and you can see our regiments in a better layout when I scroll down here and see how we have 4 cavalry, and if I counted this up, we would have 10 up here. You can edit the name of your armies directly on the map, so let's just call this Royal Tutorial. Okay, and then we can press enter, and then we can see on the right-hand side of the screen of our ledger that our army's name is Royal Tutorial. Up here actually is where you can select a leader. So if I click this, I can recruit another general by spending military monarch points. I can even give my ruler a command, but because he has 0 monarch points across the board, he's going to be a horrible ruler, and there's a risk of them dying in battle, etc. But when you recruit a general, you'll see them down here, and you can select them. And you'll see their ranking points in those phases of battle that we discussed. Fire, shock, there's one for maneuver, and there's extra bonuses that these generals can get for sieges. So we can actually assign a general here by spending monarch points and then getting better and better, what these dots are called pips. Better and better pips, the higher our military technology level is. Let's go back. Okay, so how do we recruit armies? Let's show you the hardest way, and then I'll show you the easiest way. So the hardest way to do it is by the province menu. So if I click on Oxford here, I can click right here where it says Recruit Regiment, click that button, and then click Latin Medieval Infantry, and we'll start recruiting a unit. And that unit of 1,000 soldiers will be done by 30 August 1446. So we'll have about a month and a half before they're fully recruited. The other way that you can do it is to go to this production interface here, and then automatically at the top you have your land units. You can click on, let's say I want cavalry, and I can click on the specific provinces that I want the cavalry to go to. However, the problem with those first 2 recruitment methods is that the units will just kind of be chilling here on the map. So you'd have to drag, click, put them into an army, and there's a better way to do this automatically via the army view. Just to say that in this tab too, you can recruit mercenaries or define your army templates here. But remember that mercenaries cost an upfront cost, and they also have an upkeep cost. But so do your regular fighting soldiers as well. So We're back here, and if I simply want to recruit 1,000, let's say, Latin medieval infantry units, I just click on this plus button right here. Same with cavalry, and once we unlock artillery, we can also recruit artillery here as well. Um, this brings me to a quick aside about another resource pool that I haven't discussed yet, and that is your manpower. So obviously we know that if we recruit an infantry unit, just like in any other game, it's going to have an upfront cost. And it's also going to have a maintenance cost. That's easy to understand. Your manpower is slightly confusing. I know it definitely confused me at first when I first started playing, but your manpower is essentially just like your ducats, but it's a manpower pool. So I think of manpower as the available fighting aged men that are available in your country that you can recruit at any given time. So right now in England, we have 12,859 soldiers that we can use to either replenish our casualties that we've been taking, replenish our casualties that we've been taking, or use to recruit units. So watch how this number changes when I just click to recruit this Latin medieval infantry. So we'll go from 12,800, I recruit one, and now we're down to 11,800, because 1,000, right? Um, your maximum manpower pool is dependent on how many provinces you have and what their military development is. And that sort of makes sense, right? Like the more land mass you have, the bigger your population, the more manpower that you can draw from. You can get more of this manpower. And again, this slightly builds up over time. So every month we get 265 manpower, which will slowly improve with time as well as our country improves and improves. But to increase the size of the pool, let's click on Oxford, which we already did, for example, and you would click right here. We would spend 49 military power to improve the base manpower by 275. So that is where your manpower pool comes from and how it can be expanded. One thing that you may run into is like if you fight a lot of very costly battles and wars, like it's kind of easy to, all of a sudden be down, for us, 11,000 soldiers if we just kept fighting in Ireland. And when this gets to zero, you can see that if we don't have enough manpower, it's going to be hard to replenish our troops that are currently in the field. So make sure you keep an eye on this and sometimes take breaks between very extensive wars or several battles to allow your manpower to kind of come back up. So that's manpower, and that's recruitment in a nutshell. Let me just show you the technology screen real fast. So remember I said, hey, cool, everything with your military technology gets improved. And that's true because at our next technology level, we'll start increasing the fire and shock phase of both of our infantry and the shock phase of our cavalry. So you can start to see why, like, fighting a military power that has better technology than you could be pretty detrimental. Um, right here, we can get improved flanking range. This is the military tactics that I was talking about that can be improved with technology. Your morale that we discussed as well. See those giant jumps by level 15? Like, we're at 2.6 right now. At level 4, we're going to be at 3.1 morale, which means that our troops are going to be able to stay in the field a lot longer. And then by 15, we're going to start going up by ones. And so that's really going to improve our morale. This is the combat width, right? So the amount of gray boxes or the amount of like soldiers that you can field like on the front line at one time, again, improved by technology. Your supply limits. This basically limits the amount of attrition that you get when you're in enemy provinces, and you'll start getting casualties and attrition. Like if you're too far into an enemy province, or you haven't come home in a long time. And this is just like the extra buildings that can be unlocked as well. So let me bring you to this next beast of a tab. This may make more sense to you now that we kind of went through battle, but let's just show you the military tab. So this is where your infantry and cavalry are. And when your technology is unlocked, all you do is you'll kind of get a prompt out here up here saying that you have some outdated units. You can just click on one of these boxes here, and you can change. You can see all the different types of units that can eventually be unlocked. Man, look at that. So mixed order infantry. See how that has offensive fire 4. It has good defensive bonuses just across the board. We're just at the start of the game. Check this out. Like, we only have like one offensive morale and one defensive morale here. So we have a long ways to go. But this is kind of how you can, definitely see how your increased technology levels can certainly add to the power of your fighting forces. So, okay, so back to the military. You can do the same thing with cavalry. There's some like extra information on the right-hand side. All these numbers are going to make a lot more sense to you, except for the Navy stuff. So we already discussed military tactics, what our level is. Our army tradition, basically the better that your armies do in battle, the more army tradition you have, kind of like the legionnaires of Rome. Like, the more well-renowned your troops are, the better they fight in wars, the more battles they win, your army tradition is going to go up. And you can see how that kind of improves the morale of our armies, our manpower recovery speed for a manpower pool, etc., etc. This is the discipline box. This is the morale of your armies. Currently, we're at 2.61. Our fort defense, we haven't covered forts yet, and the land force limit. Land force limit. So I didn't touch on this yet. So land force limit can actually be increased by the amount of technology that you have, and it slowly increases if you continue to build up provinces with military technology. So what the heck is it? Let me just go back to that box. So what land force limit is, you see how that says 28 out of 37? All that means is, did I read that right? Yes, 28 regiments out of 37. Yeah, that makes sense, Rex, because, sorry, I was looking at the Navy first. So we have 13,143 soldiers here because we took casualties, and they're gradually being replenished. And we have 14,000 here, which gives a total regiment size of 28. So what that 37 means is, like, you can recruit regiments up to 37. But if you go above that, you're going to end up paying much more upkeep costs. And as kind of an aside, when I hover over here, I can actually see at the bottom here what our land force limit is too, just in case I don't like go over it. So you can go over it if you have the funds to support it, but generally it's a good idea to keep it at or below your army force limit until your technology or country improves and allows your army force limit to get much larger than what it currently is. Was there anything else on the screen I wanted to show you? Navy tradition, we haven't talked about Navy. Cavalry to infantry ratio. So this just means that, like, you can't load your armies. I mean, I think certain countries can, but you can't just pick all cavalry, right? So you have to have at least the cavalry can't be more than 50% of your infantry size. This is where your combat width thing is. This is the morale of your navies. We haven't touched on that. Siege ability, how good your troops are at sieging forts. And that's also Navy stuff. So this is starting to come to make a lot more sense for us right now, right? This is how much each one of these regiments cost right here, what the combat ability is. We have English tradition, which is just kind of a decision in the game and sort of like a pseudo technology thing that automatically comes with England, so our forces are 10% more effective. And you can see what like our fire and shock good things are here. So currently, we have 28 total units. 21 of them are infantry, 7 are cavalry, but just a super detailed readout, right? Now, remember I talked about forts. This video is going on a little bit longer than I anticipated, but I did promise that we would discuss forts. So what the heck are forts? So you can see forts as these kind of castle-like things on the map. So I have one in the north, one in Wales, I have one in Caen, and one in
Calais. So you can see them based on this like little fort-like symbol thing here. So what are they and what do they do? I can get a better look at them by clicking on fort level map mode right here. And I see they're marked by this kind of black thing, and they're surrounded by this green stuff. So forts actually do a couple really important things. I'll save the most important thing for the last, for the end of this video. But the first thing they do is, see how I'm sieging down this province right here? I'm sieging down this province. When I click on this, let me just click on, okay, there. So this is a capital province, so it, because it's a capital of this Irish province, so it already kind of has a fort in it. And what forts do is they basically make it a lot harder to capture a province because it just makes it take a lot longer. Basically, you just have to post a bunch of troops there, have them chill for a bit, and wait for this number to get to 100%. Once it gets to 100%, you have conquered the fort and you have conquered the province, okay? So it just makes like troops, it makes conquering certain high value provinces a lot harder to conquer, and that gives you time to send extra reinforcements to go and take care of them. The second thing that forts do, let's do this for example. So we have a fort here in Northumberland. So the country that owns the fort, no matter what happens, the soldiers there will always be on the defensive. So, for example, if Scotland comes up here through the north and attacks this province, let's say they declare war on me, and I take my army up here, even though they're first and they're the quote unquote defensive army, my unit coming up here, when I attack them, I'll be considered on the battle screen as the defensive army. And remember what I showed you when our armies fought here, how we got some of those like negative provincial modifiers? That's because you can look at what the province looks like by the province view, and you can see that picture right here. So this province has woods. So this gives a -1 dice roll for the attackers. And the other thing it has is it has our little river going through it. So that river also penalizes any attacking unit into this province from those other provinces that are glowing up right there. The reason I say that is because we have a fort right here that's built on a marsh, and that marsh gives a dice roll for attacker -1. And we also have a little river thing, and we can clearly see it here, but in some provinces you can't really see it. We have a little river thing here that says that any attacking unit will get a penalty for being the attacking unit, which means that even though they're technically on defense, if I bring an army up here and attack that army, they will actually get all the negative modifiers for their attack. So that's another thing that forts are used for. The most important thing that forts are used for actually are in choke nodes. So let's go back to see what that green stuff is. So here's our fort, here's some green stuff. This green stuff is the area of control of this fort. What area of control means is that any adjacent province next to a fort has an exerted area of control on it. Why that's important and what that means is that an army can't move past an area of control unless it takes care of the fort first. So if Scotland came from the north and came down here, it couldn't just say, okay, peace out, fort, I'm just going to keep going down south. It's going to have to take this province or go to this fort and take this fort.
Or it can go and take the fort directly. Once this fort's knocked out, then they're free to move. They can also retreat from where they came, but this actually kind of confused me when I first started playing the game because I remember I was at war with France or something like that, and like all I wanted to do was get to Reims, and it made my units go all the way around Germany to get to it, and I was like, why the heck is that? It's because there's a couple forts here exerting area of control. So that is forts. Okay, so we covered recruitment, we covered tactics, we showed battle, we really covered the military in detail. And again, if you don't care for that amount of detail, shoot, just start recruiting soldiers, put them into battle, and see what happens, right? So, okay, so this is the end of the land warfare section. In the next video, let's discuss the Navy. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content, and I will see you in the next video.